What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be going over just kind of an analysis to why Trump is the major favorite to win the 2024 presidential election. Now, before we get started with the video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, make sure to go ahead and follow Twitter and join the Discord in the description down below. And so, guys, if you look at the Real Clear Politics average, Trump is currently up by 2.2%. He's kind of having a rebound, actually. That little Biden surge was kind of short-lived, as, Biden was gaining back some Democratic support, but the second that the trial, started occurring right on April 16th, Biden kind of peaked here, but ever since the trial started for Trump, Biden's kind of been going down in the average. He actually lost like a little bit over a point. And Kennedy was kind of having a surge since the trial began and is kind of flatlining at like 10%. Trump is back up to 41.4, and West and Stein have actually maintained their percentages, which is pretty interesting that is the case. You could see there's a bunch of leads. Maris has Biden up 5. NBC News has Biden up 2, but other than that, every single poll has Trump up by quite a bit in the aggregate. And so that's without even Rasmussen in the aggregate, and he's up by 2.2. I'm sure if they included Rasmussen, he'd probably be up by like 3 points. And he tends to be underestimated in the Electoral College by a decent amount, or at least in the popular vote, he always gets underestimated by, I believe, by RCP by like 1 to 3 points. He always gets underestimated by. So if you were to apply this and say, okay, well, he's gonna, probably end up, let's say he ends up winning the popular vote by 5.2%. Let's say he gets the max, overestimation or something. This shifts the popular vote. Like, if we were to do the math, that shifts the popular vote by about, let's see what the math ends up being. I believe it would be 9.7. So it's almost a 10-point shift nationally. And what ends up happening is, this is my part of the model, so I have to plug in the RCP aggregate and Biden's approval rating into here. It gives me the results, and I have the polling averages, the demographic polls, the results from the previous elections, the swing, the trend, average, change in demographics, and then I have my friend Gold Crown Politics' model. We average out the results, and we kind of end up getting this, which puts Trump in a pretty good spot to win the Electoral College. He's actually up quite a bit in this scenario. He wins Ohio, Iowa by safe margins. Florida, Texas are safe. Alaska, South Carolina are all safe. California, I'd assume, would be safe, with like DC, Maryland, Massachusetts, and Vermont. And if you were to go through this list, you'd see California is right above the 15-point margin. Connecticut is right on the 10-point margin. However, if you look at Delaware, that falls under the category. If you look at Rhode Island, you'd see that it's still above 10 points. But New Jersey, in this scenario, would actually be within 5. It'd actually be a lean Democratic state. So would Colorado and Illinois in this scenario. Hawaii is a 13-point victory. It's not under the safe category yet. It's not likely, but it is, getting there, significantly closer. Washington and Oregon are in the likely Democratic column. They are under 10-point victories in this scenario. Maine second would be safe. If we look at Maine's first, it's actually right above the 10-point threshold in that scenario. And a state like Virginia, those would be flipping in this scenario. You'd see Arizona, Nevada, all of these states, they'd actually be over 10-point victories. Arizona's safe, Georgia would be safe, Nevada would be, as well as North Carolina. And more than likely, the Rust Belt would be completely out of reach for, Democrats overall. Nebraska second would be lean in this scenario. If we were to go to New Mexico, that'd be a lean state. Virginia would also be, tilting Republican in this scenario, which is quite interesting. Minnesota would be a 1.26 victory for, Trump in this scenario. And if you look at New York, it's right above the 10-point threshold. It's right there. And if we look at Maine, it's actually a tilt margin for Trump as well. And New Hampshire, I'd assume, would also be a tilt margin, which puts Trump at 347 Electoral College votes, just off of that historical underestimation as a whole. And let's say, okay, the polls are off by 3.5 points, in Biden's favor. So let's say, there's a 3.5-point miss. Trump gets overestimated by 3.5 points. Let's even be generous and give a 4-point error. So let's say Biden is there by 1.8. That's still if we were to do that, that's still going to be a 2.7 shift, to the right either way in the aggregate. And that still puts Trump winning the Electoral College fairly easily. He's still fairly easily wins the electoral college. Even in that scenario, even if I were to estimate, okay, Biden's popular vote is probably going to be around here, it's still a really easy win for him, to the point where even Florida and Texas are still safe. Iowa, Ohio, all of those states are still out of reach for him. Georgia, Arizona, Nevada would all presumably be likely in that scenario. North Carolina would be an 8-point victory. Probably Wisconsin, at this point, would end up, all the Rust Belt states would be likely. I'd assume that probably these would be safe, including Colorado. Illinois would be under, as well as these. New Jersey would probably still be likely in this scenario. We're actually going to look at the map here. Yeah, it would still probably be likely. These kind of states, New Hampshire, Virginia, these would be lean. New Mexico would be lean. That'd be safe. This would be safe. And if we look at, Minnesota, for example, you'd have like a 2.7 victory there. And so that kind of puts, Trump in a good spot there. And actually, Michigan's actually still in the lean Republican column. And Pennsylvania is already in the 5-point range. So, and if we look at, Maine's first, this would presumably be a lean Democratic state. And Nebraska second would still be a lean Democratic state, putting Trump at 312. Problem, with Biden as the incumbent president, if you look at the economy, he's down 18 points on the economy. If you look at foreign policy, he is down 25 points there. If you look at inflation, he is 30 points down on that. If we look at crime, he's going to be down by 15.5% on the average. If you look at immigration, he's down by 30.7%. He's more disapproved of on immigration than he is even inflation. And if we go to Ukraine, he's down by 13 points on that. And if we look at direction of the country, that right now is currently at a really, really bad spread. It is currently at, if it will pull up now, because this does go back quite a while, it is currently at minus 40 points. So literally a quarter of Americans think that the country is going in the right track. And if you look at the swing states, Trump is up by 5 points in Arizona. So he's up by 5 in Arizona, which is insane. He's up by 5. And in the 5-way race, he's up by 4.7%. So it has narrowed in the 5-way aggregate, but he's still outside the margin of error in Arizona. If we look at Nevada, he's up by 4.5 points in the aggregate here. And if we go to the 5-way race, he's still up by 7.5. So he's well outside the margin in Nevada. He probably actually wins Nevada before he even wins all the other swing states, to be honest, based out of the polling here. He's polling almost as high as, even Florida or Texas, because the aggregates in Texas are like 9.5 for Trump. And this is only 2 points off from that. So he's doing extremely well. That Bloomberg, poll is really boosting his number in the aggregate here. It's really putting him up, because that poll was a really, really big poll. If you look at Georgia, Trump's up by 3.8 in the 2-way race. And if you look at the 5-way race, Trump is up by 6 percentage points in the 5-way race. So he's well outside the margin of error in Georgia. So at that point, based out of polling, literally just off of a statistical error, you can literally give Trump the Sun Belt already. You could basically guarantee him 268 electoral votes in the electoral college. He already is sitting there at that point, because he's well outside the margin of error in all of those states. And so Trump is basically already guaranteed 268 electoral votes based out of those states. And so he really just needs to pick off one Rust Belt state. That's all he needs to become the president. He doesn't need all 3. He only needs one more. And he doesn't even need Nevada or Arizona. He could literally just get Pennsylvania and already win the electoral college. So his path is a lot easier than before, because Texas is not really contested, and neither is Florida, even though for some reason Biden thinks it's a contested state. Ohio really isn't. Iowa is not either. And North Carolina, it's closer theoretically, but to an extent it's not really even a competitive state overall. Biden really shouldn't be putting resources there. And on top of that, it's really considered not, Biden really doesn't have a chance here. I mean, if he didn't win it before, he probably doesn't now. States like New Mexico are up in question. States like Minnesota, Nebraska is second, Maine at large, New Hampshire. These states are up for grabs for Trump. He could easily go out there and get these within a couple points and possibly even win them. This is what the battleground map for the election really should be looking like, because based out of the polling, this is what it should be looking at. Well, technically based out of polling, this is where it should be. So really the Rust Belt would be the only states that are really outside the margin of error, or that are within the margin of error. But if we even look at the Rust Belt states, if we look at Wisconsin, Trump's up by 1.8 in the two-way race, or in the three-way race, he's up by the exact same amount, and he's surging there currently. And if we look at Michigan, he's up by 1.2%. In the five-way aggregate, he's actually up by like 0.2. He actually even tied here, which is quite interesting. Biden's kind of having a little bit of a surge in Michigan there. So I'm going to have to update the aggregate soon. If we look at Pennsylvania, Trump's actually up by a point in the aggregate. Now, Biden was leading there by quite a bit. They hadn't really updated the polls for like a week or so, and then they finally threw in a new one, and Biden went up a little bit in the aggregate, and Trump finally took him over. But then in the five-way race, Trump is up by a little bit more. He's up by 1.6%. And he's actually never lost the lead in the three-way aggregate, which is pretty interesting. He has not lost his lead in the three-way aggregate as of right now. And so Trump is performing exceptionally well in the polling data, and he tends to be underestimated quite a bit in polling data. So if he, is off the mark here by about 3 or 4 points, that puts him in likely territory. So does Wisconsin, so does Michigan, so does Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, even, North Carolina, all these states. If they're off by a couple points, like they have been before, against Trump, then Trump could be winning all of these swing states pretty comfortably, and that would give him 312 electoral votes. And he's probably already guaranteed 268 based out of the polling. Now, I'd say realistically, he's probably guaranteed 251 because Arizona and Nevada are not locks for sure. However, I think based out of polling and the way the state's been trending, I'd probably actually put Nevada in Trump's column already, like no matter what. And really, if you're looking at polling data, Arizona looks really good for Trump, but I'd say it's not that big of a lead yet for me to for sure put it like no matter what happens, Trump probably wins it. I'm probably going to add Nevada into that column. So Trump's already up to 257. So Trump would, need Michigan. He could take Pennsylvania. He could take, Wisconsin and Arizona, or even take, take Wisconsin, Nebraska second and Maine at large. That'd get him to 270. So he's got a couple of paths from here. He's got multiple paths to win once he reaches 250 electoral votes. It's a lot easier for him to win that way, compared to before, where he kind of had to run the score where, oh my god, Ohio, Iowa's competitive, Ohio, Florida, North Carolina, Texas, Georgia. So like Trump really had to run up the score, and like, oh, Nevada was basically a lock for Biden. So was Minnesota and Michigan, and so was Pennsylvania. So back then, Trump really had to run the score up in the swing states. He basically had to win Texas, Ohio, Iowa, Iowa, Ohio, Georgia, Arizona, North Carolina, and then pick up Wisconsin at the very end. And in that previous election, that would have gotten him to 269, and he almost did it because he barely lost in these states. He barely lost in these states by a couple of thousand votes. That would have gotten him an electoral college tie. And so that's basically where the election is sitting at. I think that Trump is pretty much really favored to win the election based on the issues. The economy on paper looks a little bit better, but what's going on is that there's a lot of illegal immigrants coming in, taking some of those jobs, and a lot of those jobs that have been created are very low income paying jobs, and a lot of part-time jobs, no full-time jobs, have really been created in the past like month or so. And that's a really big problem for the economy. Biden wants to impose doubling the capital gains tax, for example, which would cripple the economy. Immigration, he's letting in all these illegals in, unchecked, and then, every single issue, even foreign policy, with Ukraine sending too much foreign aid, not really being able to get control of the situation, as well as like, the Israel-Hamas conflict is also a really big problem too. He's not really handling that well either, and he's really been funding both sides of both wars, if you really think about it, which I probably will end up doing a video on that at some point. But Trump is ridiculously favored to win the election. He is the heavy favorite to win right now. And so if you guys did enjoy this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, make sure to go ahead and follow the Twitter and join the Discord in the description down below, and I will see you guys very, very soon.